Hey guys, Paul here from that's terrible hair, the Complete Personal Trainer podcast. Took a couple of days off posting. Sure, no one cared. Joking. No, just lots of other things going on, which are really cool. Lots of work being done, lots of writing being put together for the online Complete Personal Trainer course. So everything's going really, really well. They're on track to have it finished. 12 months, 8 topics of each topic by March 31. So today's podcast, we're going to be talking about something a little bit different. We're going to be talking about training. We're going to be talking about quad training tips in particular. So this was taken from a conversation I had with one of my clients, one of my PT clients that I still have this morning as he did his squat workout. And he decided that I should do a quadcast, meaning a podcast talking about the quads. So I thought, why not? That's as good as reason as any to do a podcast. And the reason... So with quads, so they're a really interesting muscle group. They're a muscle group that's really quite misunderstood. They're biarticular muscles, so they cross two joints. They have 4 different muscles in there, 5 if you include this weird one around the knee. And they have a mix of different fiber types in the quadriceps. So the good thing about that makes they're quite responsive to growth in all rep ranges. So you see Olympic lifters who don't do like a ton of general hypertrophy work with really big quads. You see bodybuilders who do a ton of hypertrophy work with really big quads. So the first thing that we need to take in mind when it comes to building big quads and strong quads too, is that there are a number of different approaches that you can take that you don't have to do anything except for train them. So a lot of the prevailing wisdom in the past was if you want to get big quads, you got to squat big, you got to squat deep, you have to do squats to get optimal amount of leg hypertrophy. It was then justified by things like squats release more IGF-1, so growth hormone and things like that, high levels of testosterone secretion, which caused the whole upper body to grow. And now we know that that was not exactly true. It didn't really make a difference here, there, or anywhere. So what we can ascertain from quads is that there's nothing that you have to do. So the really good strategy is to work out something that you can overload, something that you can train that gives you a high stimulus to a low fatigue ratio. So for some people, squats are really good. If someone's got the right type of proportions to do high bar back squats, they can be a fantastic quad builder. If someone doesn't have the proportions to do that, so someone with hip retroversion where it's posteriorly rotated, rotated back and they can't achieve that full depth of the squat, they're not going to get as good quad development out of it. So they could do something like a leg press, hack squat, pendulum squat, etc. So with the quads, for training for hypertrophy, it's pretty simple. Basically, find a couple of exercises that you're good at, get really good at them for a lot of reps, and you're pretty much good to go. Now, for training the quads for strength, it can be a little bit different. Flip back to hypertrophy. The greatest range of motion that you can actively take the muscle through is going to give the better hypertrophy outcome. So if you are going to do things like leg press, for example, instead of squat, you do have to leg press deep. If you are going to squat as your preferred squat lift, you do have to squat deep to get the best out of it. So it really needs to be, they do respond to a really good range of motion. From there, we can also overload the quads in the lengthened and the shortened position. So things like squats, for example, overload the quad in the lengthened position because as you go down, your hamstring covers your calf. You're putting your quad on stretch, particularly if the knees are going forward. You can do the same thing with a pendulum squat and a leg press, etc. Train the quads in the shortened position. That's rec fem work. So that's very much things like leg extensions and kind of like you go to exercise for training the quad in a fully shortened position. Now, in terms of strength and injury rehabilitation, it's a little bit different. When we're looking at strength for the quads, the main exercise we're looking at is the barbell back squat. But a lot of the time, people aren't going to be testing their barbell back squat with a quad dominant position. So what I mean by that is you've got 2 types of squats. You've got a high bar quad dominant squat where the torso is more vertical, the knees travel more over the toes. It's more suited for Olympic lifting and things like that. And then you've got a low bar hip dominant squat, which is more used for powerlifting, where you squat down until the crease of the hip or the thigh is parallel to the ground, and then you explode up again, which shifts much more the load into the posterior chain. So when you're looking at strengthening the quads for the lift, you need to look at, first of all, how you're going to express that strength. So what's the actual expression going to be? So if it's an Olympic lifter, high bar squats are probably better. If it's Powerlifting, you're probably going to be looking better at low bar squats. So you want to look at then loading the quads with exercises that will help carry over to that, but also maintaining or minimizing over fatigue. So what I mean by that is, well, first of all, I like to clear this up. Fatigue's really good. People need to chase fatigue in the gym. Too many people aren't achieving the results they want because they're too scared of getting tired. You need to be gassed by the end of your training session. So with fatigue, though, you want to make sure you minimize the right type of fatigue, because there's multiple types of fatigue. There's not just muscular fatigue, there's nervous system fatigue, there's joint fatigue. There's a number of different factors there. So if I have someone who's a powerlifter and they're doing like a low bar squat as their dominant squatting pattern, I want to strengthen their quads, but I probably don't want to do a high bar squat all the time to strengthen that, because there's a number of, I guess, conflicting issues there. The first one may be if they're a low bar squatter and they're putting a ton of weight through their body. If I put more systemic load on their body, so more axial loading, like really heavy high bar squatting, it will fatigue their quads. Absolutely. The technique's going to be a little bit off. They're going to have to work really hard in the technique, because the similarities between a low bar and a high bar squat in terms of start position, they're pretty similar. And people will naturally go back to where they've grooved most of their strength. So I might not include a high bar squat for that particular reason, particularly as we get close to the expression of strength phase. I'm holding my favorite unicorn pen. What I might do for that person is I might load the bar in an anterior position, so something like a front squat, for example, or a safety bar squat, because what's going to happen there, the position of the implement is going to allow me to more easily overload the tissues that I want to overload without causing as much systemic fatigue, because the axial loading is going to be lower. So you definitely can't front squat as much as you high bar back squat. If you can, there's a problem with your high bar back squat, but say doing a front squat or any other kind of variation, it will put more load there. Another option that you can do, and one that's really useful for most clientele, is to shift the emphasis towards single leg work for the quad strengthening stuff. So looking at things like front foot elevated split squats and Bulgarian split squats has been really good ways to create a unilateral demand in the body. So you're addressing things like, trunk stability, muscle function versus muscle action. You're achieving a lot of really, really good things out of that. What it does, though, it does lower systemic fatigue on the body, because you simply can't lift as much on one leg. To be fair, though, those exercises aren't totally true single leg exercises, because one leg is touching the ground or the pad to stop you from falling over. But the point remains that most of the emphasis is on one single leg. From there, you could implement hypertrophy strategies in those particular lifts. So like higher rep ranges, I wouldn't do Bulgarians in like sets of 3, for example. The risk to reward factor isn't really there, because you want to build more tissue that's going to be useful for the actual application of squatting. So you use the assistance exercises to build the tissue that's going to be used for the very specific movement pattern in the squat. For athletic performance, with squats, for example, quads, for example, we think squats most of the time for that, because the squats are functional movement pattern. Although the most functional things we do breathe, walk, see, and eat, and hear. So we need to not worry so much about that. But what we can use squats for is we can simply reduce the range of motion in season for our athletes who are competing in a particular sport and or activity, because what that does, it will allow them to maintain the good qualities developed from the squat, such as increase in rate coding, increase in rate of force development, explosive power, axial loading for bone density, etc. But without the downsides of doing the full range of motion squats, which are more, you will get sore, there's more muscle damage, so there's more muscle pain, decreased mobility availability during the training season due to niggles, aches, pains, injuries, or general fatigue to the legs, and also ease of application. So very easy to get a taller athlete to do a quarter squat explosively. That is the coach line for a full depth barbell high bar squat. So guys, there's a lot there with the quads that we can really go into. We can also look at quads for injury rehabilitation, so doing concentric only work for someone who's had knee problems, for example, but I don't want to bore people for too long. With quads, break it down to this. For hypertrophy, anything works for quads. They have a mixed fiber type. There's no lift that's preferential. Find the lift that gives your client the ability to move through the greatest range of motion, active range of motion, so it's safe for them, and that they get the highest stimulus to the best stimulus to fatigue ratio, so they feel their quads a lot without feeling their knee joints about to explode. that's probably going to be the best thing for quad dominance, and get stronger in the rep range that's appropriate to said exercise. So leg extensions, do not do them in sets of 1 to 5. It will not go well. For barbell back squats, they can be in 1 to 5. For strength, look at the expression of strength that you want to use eventually with those particular clients who you're expressing that strength with. What you can do from there is you can pick the exercise variant that's going to overload the tissue that you want strengthen the best. Single leg work can be very, very valuable for you because of its ability to reduce axial loading. And for an athletic population, looking at quarter squats and explosive type work in season to maintain the qualities they developed in the off season. We're not looking to get better, we're looking at maintaining. And keep single leg exercises in the program there for the other variances and the other benefits they provide, which are control and stability and strength in the frontal and the transverse plane. So guys, that's quads. If you've enjoyed it, you get something out of it, let me know, because what I'll do is I'll go through more body parts and more muscle groups in more lifts in more detail to help you get better at training those individual movements, patterns, and lifts for your clientele. Thanks heaps for watching, guys, and thanks everyone who's reached out to me on social media and added me, etc. Really awesome. Looking forward to chatting to you all in person real soon.